Good afternoon, everybody. I'm slowly letting folks in. Welcome. Hi, friends. Thanks for being here. I'm going to let another 30 seconds or so go by as folks are popping in. Hope everyone is enjoying this fall weather, getting some good sunshine. Okay. Okay, well, I'll just start off, and as folks come, I want to respect everybody's time. So as people keep popping in, I will be welcoming. But I just want to go ahead and say too, I recommend putting it on the speaker view. So when our therapists are speaking, I'm sure you all know this by now, but it'll just be a little bit easier to kind of stay focused on who our speaker is. But my name is Katherine Hofstetter. I know many of you, and I haven't met some of you, but I'm the Director of Development at the Refuge Center for Counseling. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist. And so we're thankful to have you guys here today. Churches are a core part of our foundation. We are a Christ-centered counseling agency, the largest in Williamson County, and we do serve over 17 counties in Middle Tennessee. With telehealth, we're actually able to serve the entire state right now. So really grateful to be partnered with so many wonderful churches and congregations. And this is our third church call of the pandemic. We've been doing these just to bridge build and hopefully be a resource and partner together with you all. The church is doing hard and holy work right now, as always, and we know these are challenging days. So we really want to come alongside you and support and encourage you how we best can. So today we are focusing on our youth and our children, and we have the phenomenal Rob Fitzpatrick, our Director of Child and Teen Programs, here with two of our therapists. And that would be Hannah Harriman and Caitlin Coyle. And so we're looking forward to hearing from each of you. So I will let Rob take it from here, and we'll end with a Q&A the last 10 or 15 minutes. And again, I'm recording this, so feel free to share it with your team members and those who can't be with us today. So I'm going to mute myself and then let Rob, you take it away.
Very cool. Thank you, Katherine. And if you can let me share my screen, I'd appreciate it. But while we're getting that going, I just have a couple resources, and I'm looking forward to the stuff that Hannah and Caitlin are sharing. But I first wanted to start with a thank you for you guys. If you are working with kids, I think from March really until the start of school, weekly I'll be talking to the young people and, not able to go to school. I coach ice hockey in the area, and we were shut down completely. Can't meet for any kind of meeting, can't go to the rink. So not seeing really anybody, and pretty resoundingly, the people who were checking in on these young people were their youth group, some kind of person at church or something like that. So that was really awesome. And I appreciate you guys doing that, I'm sure, and everybody else. But yeah, like I mentioned, just a couple quick slides and hopefully some resources here, and then we can do maybe a question and answer at the end. But hopefully this part is really just preaching to the choir, but it always impresses me, and I always try to share with folks, particularly as we're finishing up counseling process, how much of an impact that being a part of church community, being a part of youth group, the deeper you go, the better the results are. And there was a study from Harvard that even just going to a service and not being an active participant, but going to a service 1 hour a week had positive effects on someone's mental health or a young person's mental health that reached over the next portion of their life. There's the book that is here on the left, The Spiritual Child, went a little bit deeper. And if you haven't read this, I would really recommend it. But it just talked about the levels of things. So if a young person is a member of a church community, the impact it has. If a child and at least one parent is an active participant in some kind of spiritual life, the results are pretty astounding. So what this Dr. Miller was able to find was things at the level of 40% less likely to use and abuse substances. A very similar, even a little bit higher likelihood that they're going to be resistant to things like depression or anxiety. And then a lot better decisions that they're making as far as becoming intimate before marriage, things like that. So obviously there's levels to it, but I think in this season, when we're spending way more time with our family than ever before, that's a great opportunity for parents and kids, and any way that I could or you guys could encourage those kind of conversations at home would be great. The next slide here, what I was looking for as far as resources, I'm sure hopefully you guys have a great network of things, but these were two I just wanted to highlight in particular, and somewhat similar names, but the one to the left here is from Yale, and it's the Yale Youth Ministry Institute. And a lot of what they had to offer was things to do digitally. I'm sure you guys have all become well equipped with Zoom and things like that, but how we can connect, how we can do studies, things like that, or Bible studies, stuff like that in a remote setting. So really great. And this is from Princeton, their seminary. And this page, very similarly, is called the Institute for Youth Ministry. And as you can see, they had a special page for youth ministry in a pandemic, and how we can do things like some kind of mission trip or some kind of impact that obviously it's not going to be too soon that we're doing things like international missions or those kind of things that can be really a bedrock of somebody's experience. So obviously not the same to do something online or just individually, but some great ideas, I thought. I have two kind of things to think about for you guys and hopefully maybe inspire you as you move forward here. This slide comes from a slightly different scenario, but what this is the picture of a day. So the top will be midnight, 6 a.m., 12 noon, and 6 p.m. And what we're looking at here is two middle schoolers. The one on the left was a typical middle schooler that started the school year and lives with their birth family. The young person to the right was a child who is in foster care and went to a new community part of the way through the year. And what the lines represent are interactions with people. So right in the middle circle is interactions with your primary support group. So family, foster parents, things like that. The second circle was friends, third circle is acquaintances, and outside it is strangers. So you can see this person that's well adjusted and doing well has a really big array of connections with people. Pretty much from the time they wake up at 6 or 7 a.m. until the time they go to sleep, they're connecting with people in person, on phone calls or FaceTime, stuff like that. And this person is really maybe some conversations with their foster family, and then just on the acquaintance level. And I would argue probably from March until June, most of our circles look like this, or maybe even smaller, just in this inner circle. And if you thought about the kids that are in your youth group now, what would their 24-hour period look like? And is there a way that you can activate a little bit more relationships, maybe build in this in-between part through partnering kids up or something like that? But what it represents is this person had a much healthier view of day-to-day life, and this person was kind of struggling to adjust to things. And the very last part here before I pass it over, One of the big questions I usually get when I talk to churches is, how do you refer somebody? And when do I need to refer a young person? And so these are some of the more common things. And at the end, as we have a question and answer, if you guys have more specific questions, sure, myself or Katherine or Hannah or Caitlin would be happy to answer. But the first thing would be to have some kind of plan in place. If it's just, hey, Rob, can you go talk to this person? It may go well, but it may be really hard and maybe an awkward conversation. So what is the plan that you guys have when you have to have that kind of conversation with the child and parents? And if you do have a plan, have you checked it out lately, or has it been successful? Pretty clearly, if someone is thinking about self-harm or talking about suicide or those kind of things, it would be more of an emergency situation. And again, how are we going to handle that? When you feel like the stuff you're talking about is out of your scope, that's a word we use here, but out of your expertise, haven't come across this before, something like that. It's no sign of weakness, or you're not a good minister or those kind of things. It's finding the right skills and the right fit for the young person. Anytime there's a sudden change in behavior, I think for me and for a lot of people, that was the biggest fear in the midst of COVID, when we were all separated, that there weren't going to be teachers and there weren't going to be coaches and all these other folks that see kids on a daily basis that could say, man, something's up with so-and-so this week. Maybe I should touch base with them. Those things are usually picked up by those people who see somebody weekly or multiple times a week. And that just wasn't there. So as you notice someone that is usually really open, or a bubbly personality, or whatever you want to call it, and a sudden change to be a lot more introverted, that would be a good sign to at least start a conversation and see where it goes from there. And then the very last one, I think we all have our go-tos and the way that we try to connect with somebody. Is it through sports? Is it through movies? Is it something like that? And as you've tried to connect with somebody multiple times and it just doesn't work, that would be a good sign it's time to go to a deeper conversation. But like I said, just some quick tips for you guys, and look forward to the end there and maybe answering some specific questions.
Great. Well, thank you, Rob. Hannah's up next, but yes, please do save your questions. We will have that Q&A time. So Hannah, take it away. Thank you, Rob.
Awesome. Is there any way, I can share my screen. Awesome. So here we go. Hopefully y'all can see it. Okay, I'm going to put this. There it is. Okay. So what I'm going to be talking about today is creating connection during this pandemic. As y'all are navigating how to do that safely, it's a challenging time. I used to be involved in college ministry and being connected to the team, and they're just like, it feels like we're being thrown red tape at everything, with the surges going up, with new numbers changing, with how schools are doing, whether they'll be in person this week or online next week. Just keeping in touch with youth is really difficult. And one of the things I've been hearing a lot through clients is the difficulty of feeling connected in some way, even though they have a phone on them, that they just realize like this isn't what they want, that they want something more meaningful. I was even talking to a sophomore in college, and she's just like, I am so tapped out of Zoom meetings that I'm not even involved in my Bible study this year. And it's like, wow, how much like we know like what could be given through that, truth in the word, connection with others. But just when you're so fatigued and just feel like that connection there through computer is so different. How do we do this well? And also, how do we navigate appropriate screen time too, when that feels out the door as well, and trying to balance, work, life socially. It feels like I'm always on my phone or computer now. So here we go. We'll just dive into this. So a little bit about, I mean, these facts are probably things that y'all have seen before about Generation Z, those born between 99 and 2015. But recent data has shown that these young people experience these challenges greater in numbers than ever before. And this was taken before COVID. Mental health issues, shame and emotional wounds, porn use, and loneliness. So what's contributing to that is this is the first generation to have had a home computer in the household since birth and given a phone access at a very young age. So what this generation, a common characteristic that they feel is feeling very overwhelmed. As one reporter wrote, there is a pervasive sense that being a teenager is a draining full-time job that includes doing schoolwork, managing a social media identity, and fretting about climate change, sexism, racism, you name it. I mean, think about when you go on your own Instagram or Facebook pages, like what are you yourself managing as an adult? And put yourself in the shoes of a middle schooler and high schooler who doesn't have the tools and resources that you do. And feeling like now, especially, your identity is very much seen by what people are seeing through the screen right now. So 68% of Gen Zers reported feeling overwhelmed by everything they need to do each week. That's a very high number. The other common thing that they feel is loneliness. So once again, this stat was taken before COVID, that 3 million adolescents between the ages of 12 and 17 experienced a major depressive episode in the past year and an increase in anxiety and depression. So if this statistic was taken before COVID, imagine what the numbers are right now. And despite having constant connection to their friend through the phone to their friends, many teenagers feel more alone than ever before. So what does that mean? So what does that mean in managing screen time in a pandemic for us? It comes down to, I like this image, as you can see, of the two jars in the rock. So screen time is not good or bad, it just is. I think a lot of us who have seen The Social Dilemma recently on Netflix are probably like, I want to get rid of my phone, like it's tracking everything. But we also have to keep in mind that teenagers youth now, this is all they've experienced. And there are some really great things that come out of the phone. Like we have the technology to communicate with friends and family during this time of isolation. They're able to do school online when perhaps that might not have been an option. So we have to see the balance of, it's not all good, it's not all bad, it just is. But how we view it needs to come in terms of our values. So if you were to take the image on the left, you can see that the rocks are overwhelmed. Seeing that screen time and connection through means like this should come at a lower form of priority, as opposed to like face-to-face and being really intentional in how you're connecting with teens. So one resource I use with parents in terms of like how to value screen time in their homes, it's like, okay, think about all of the values that you want for your family, and where's screen time in all of that? They're like pretty low. Like we don't want our kids to be on it that much. And we want to value, time around the family dinner table, time connecting through intentional activities. Okay, but what happens then in the time of the day when it's like, oh, we're going to be looking at our phone here. Maybe I'll give them the iPad here. We begin to fill up our jar with kind of the lower priorities. But if we were to take it on the inverse and fill our jar with the priorities first, the rocks first, the bigger things first, then we are able to fill in with the smaller priorities, what those would be. So if we first fill our day with the intentions that we have, the values we have, then we're able to fit things in the jar. So we can't expect perfection of families, of kids in regards to screen time use these days, because it's an area so unknown. Recent reports have actually increased screen time use to instead of less than an hour, they're allowing teenagers up to 4 hours a day of healthy screen time use, which that is pretty big in itself. That we're not damaging kids by allowing them to be on the screen. So that's encouraging, but it's also, it comes with the guidance of, okay, if we're allowing kids this time on the screen and they have to use that for school, for connecting with friends or family, then what creative means can we be in trying to do this safely and in person for connection? Or how can we use screen time intentionally so that they don't see it as a big Zoom meeting, but maybe some creative way that would make it fun and engaging for them? I like the Michael Jordan image at the bottom, because I feel like that's how I look every week when my iPhone gives me my kind update of how much screen time I have used. So this is also just to demonstrate that this is a challenging time for parents and families in managing screen time. My son has been on the TV, has watched more Elmo probably than I would have ever dreamed he would have. And this is when this is him when I have to tell he has to turn Elmo off. So it's definitely a balance that families are going through, and we can have empathy and compassion towards that. But we also want to be just very wise in how we're just communicating and using it for our own means and ministry. So going back, okay, what does this mean for myself as a youth minister, as a parent, as working with youth? We need to have connection with our teens on why screen time is important to them, on why their phone is important to them. And we also want to demonstrate, healthy screen time use, where they think they might feel more connected through the phone of getting on Instagram, that can actually increase the depression and loneliness. So going to the 3 V's of values. So what do you model to your children under stress? How do you use your phone? Is it your main, do you feel that it's filling a purpose for you? How do you want to demonstrate how they can use their phone? Validation, empathizing and understanding why teenagers want to be on their screen so badly, understanding why it's hard that during, intentional youth gatherings, all of them are on their phone. Just having compassion for that of, yeah, it's kind of a big figure in their life. And also understanding that, like we said earlier, they feel very overwhelmed, and probably especially more overwhelmed right now. That their world is hard, and helping them navigate what to do rather than giving them solutions to their problems. Instead of saying, it really doesn't help having your phone on you all the time, just navigating hey, what are some ways that, we can problem solve this together? How are you feeling lonely? What can we do as a youth group, as a church, just as me as an individual? How can I step in to help you with that? And then vulnerability is just acknowledging as an adult, we struggle with our screen time use as well, especially if it feels like we're on Zoom meetings all day or connected to our phone. So leave these 3 V's of validation, values, validation, and vulnerability, just for something to ponder and think about. And lastly is, okay, what is the importance of creating connection to our teens? We mentioned, they struggle with immense loneliness, feeling overwhelmed, more mental health issues than before. And I think Rob pinpointed some great resources in regards to that, of when it's time to bring in a therapist. But this is kind of the guidelines of what they suggest of how to create connection amongst youth between parents and safe people. And I imagine we all want to be safe people to teens that are involved in our lives. So it's listening to them carefully and without judgment. It's asking questions and responding to them, staying involved in their lives, finding things to do, especially in person and safely, however you feel comfortable, and then just being a safe person to them. So my time is up over here. If y'all have questions at the end, I welcome them, but I'm going to pass the torch then on to Caitlin. Mix it out. Stop share.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. I'm gonna see if I can find my screen to share. Let's see. Okay. Okay, we all seeing it? Cool. Alrighty. Maybe. Okay, I'm just gonna do this. Alrighty. So I think this is gonna be a good kind of culminating topic after Rob and Hannah both shared. As Hannah mentioned, it is on top of just being a young person. Now we're also in the middle of a global pandemic, and stress and anxiety is being heaped on the young people in our lives. So kind of just a quick walkthrough of what that can look like in a young person, what resources are available for them, and how can we aid in that, both modeling for those people and kind of giving them the tools that they need. In true counseling fashion, I like to start all of my presentations with a Fred Rogers quote. This is just a really good one that says, when I was a boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, look for the helpers and you will always find people who are helping. And I think that's what we're all here today to accomplish, being a solace for those people who are seeing things that are fearful for them. And you can't go wrong with Mr. Rogers, so we'll move on. These are by no means an exhaustive list of signs and symptoms of anxiety or a lot of stress in a young person, but some things to look for. Some I think that are going to be more prevalent now are going to be reassurance seeking behaviors. Are we going to be okay? Is, the family we're going to be okay? A lot of attachment to a caregiver or to an adult in their life. Maybe it's going to be crying, avoidance, not wanting to go to school, some somatic symptoms. And maybe we shouldn't just be looking for one of these things or just a specific thing in each one person. It could look really different depending on how that person is going to show up that week in group, or it could be just depending on what's happening in their life. But however that stressor is appearing, to be really, to Rob's point, being really cognizant of how those things might change very abruptly, and that it could be something that's going on. I like to use this image right here of this broken bridge just to indicate kind of what happened when COVID hit us, that we thought, okay, I have this really stable platform underneath us. I know it's coming. I know it's ahead of me. And then all of a sudden it fell out underneath us. And I think their young people also had that same indicator of, okay, well, I can expect this. The adults and caregivers in my life have framed something really well for me. And now nothing feels certain. There's an abundance of that, really, just ever-changing expectations, loss of structure that maybe, I think all of us kind of at first were like, oh, this feels really welcome to have kind of a break. And now it feels directionless. Disruption of life as we knew it. And some of those anxieties and stressors that these young people had that were already there that felt like, okay, I can handle that, now feel out of control. And as we hear that, or as we see that happening, young people around us, it can feel really overwhelming, both for that young person or for us as adults in that person's life. But the good news is it's a great opportunity for us to kind of step into this place and rebuild that, to become a consistent place for that person to go to ground them in that. And I just, like Hannah and Rob have said, time and time again, I've heard from young clients that a continual source of that for them has been their church groups. And so we'll kind of talk about just very briefly a couple of ways that either in the groups together we can manage these things, or how, you can look individually at each person and kind of talk through what's happening for them. How can we calm ourselves down? One of maybe the kind of easiest ways to do that is to set aside some worry time. What can start to happen is that all the times in a young person's life feels like I have to worry about this all the time. I'm seeing it, on the TV at home. I'm seeing it at school. My teachers are talking about it. And so kind of encouraging that young person to say, okay, well, maybe, right after dinner, we'll have 20 minutes where we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what is bothering you. And that's going to be your safe place to talk about this. Or, maybe whenever they're coming to group with you guys, that you guys have a time where like, hey, let's debrief about this. I know that it's bothering you. Where it doesn't have to then leach out and totally disrupt the rest of their world. But there is a designated time where they can totally explore that. The relaxation and grounding techniques are going to be huge. And there's so many, but I think some of the most helpful are going to be belly breathing, especially for our younger kids. So really just super easy, putting a hand on the chest and on your stomach and breathing in, making sure that the hand that's on your stomach is going out before the one on your chest is, and just continuing to do that as you're calming those people down. One of my favorite grounding techniques to use with young people is doing the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So you're going to pick out 5 things that you can see around you, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things that you can hear, so any external noises, 2 things you can smell, and then 1 thing that you can taste. So kind of like, what does the inside of your mouth taste like? Maybe like you just had coffee, or something like that. That one's usually the hardest one, but still something good to have that person slow down, get in the moment, and not get so overwhelmed with maybe what's been stressing them out that day. To echo what Hannah was speaking about, still incredibly important to encourage interaction. It could be virtually or in person, taking into account Hannah's kind of guidelines about screen time, but being able to share a space or create a space for these young people that can feel connecting in a way that doesn't feel forced, or in a space or at school or what have you. And this can be especially important for children who have been experiencing social anxiety, and for the past 6 months, that has not been an outlet for them. A huge thing is to continue maintaining schedules and routines and expectations. So having them know that they can count on coming to their youth group every week is going to be huge. And knowing that they're going to see you every week is going to be huge. Having that expectation there and continuing to rely on that is a huge mitigator of those stress responses. Talking a little bit more is avoiding too much reassurance. Young people can start to rely on that if they get it too much, and they can want to hear it more and more often. And sometimes if the adult isn't able to give that, the anxiety can worsen. So instead of reminding the young person of the ways that they're already taking care of themselves, the skills that they've already been given, the ways that you guys are showing up for them, while also being able to show the positives that the young person is been able to achieve thus far. I think that we talked about this a little bit already, but modeling calm within yourself. It's important to be honest with these young people about what's happening for you, and setting boundaries about oversharing your experience so that it feels like, because it could be that there's an impact about what that looks like for that young person. And so modeling with that, how do we, kind of moving back to this piece of grounding and relaxation, how can we show these young people that this is achievable in this time? And finally, just looking for the positive. This has felt like a really uncertain and scary at times period of history, but encouraging yourself and for these people that we're in charge of to look for those silver linings. Maybe it's the increased time spent together. Maybe it's ways you're experiencing joys together. Maybe it's opportunities that are coming up for your church. Maybe it's some positive outcomes that you weren't sure were going to be available to you guys, but continuing to seek those out so it doesn't feel like the stress or the low times are going to outweigh those, so that there's some things that the people, young people in your group and yourself have to look forward to while trying to maintain some calm internally. I think that's all I had prepared, but as Hannah mentioned, I as well welcome questions when we are done.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. This is Katherine again. It says Lisa Martin. That's our office manager. She's amazing. But she set up our Zoom account, and I just realized it was probably confusing when I introduced myself as Katherine and it says Lisa. Anyway, thanks guys. As always, you're a wealth of info and encouragement. And now we're just going to open it up to y'all, and feel free to unmute yourself and shoot a question to one of the therapists or just to anybody, and they can kind of pick it up as they see fit. So again, it's recorded. We'll have these slides for you, and it will be great. This will hopefully be a great resource you can continue to share with your team, and will be on our YouTube channel. Any questions? If not, I was just going to ask Rob to kind of summarize one last time, Rob, what to be looking for, kind of when to make that referral step. So we deal with this on our end too, when our role kind of stops and we need a pastor or a spiritual mentor to step in, and vice versa. So Rob, I loved those points. I think they're really important today, and Caitlin and Hannah both spoke into them too. But if you want to remind us, and that can be a note to leave on. And then if anybody has a question in the meantime, please just shoot a message or pop in.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Katherine. And I think the biggest thing it always comes back to after someone has had a really rough period, or in hindsight, almost always, particularly as people are in this position more and more, we knew in our gut like something was going on, right? Like we could tell. I think teachers have a really good job of doing that too, just having their eyes on a kid every day. But yeah, more and more, and particularly like I said before, and more in stuff that I do volunteering outside of Refuge, you can tell that something's up, and hopefully it's just that somebody's a little bit under the weather. It's something kind of brief, but more often than not, it's like, man, what's going on? And typically it's a number of small things over time, or one like big thing. Maybe parents have separated, or we had to move, or something like that. So, I mean, my biggest thing would be to encourage people to trust their gut. And yeah, particularly as you know somebody well, or you're just in your position for long, you're going to know those kind of things are happening and what to do. And then, we try to make it as easy as possible at the refuge center. And so really all it takes is a parent calling the front desk here. Or we have an info@therefugecenter.org where someone can shoot us an email, and that just gets the process rolling, and we have steps from there. But I know I also have a position with doing assessments for juvenile court here, and I get to interact with some of the other providers in the area. And like I said, it's very simple to get going. Sometimes, you need some pre-authorization for insurance or those kind of things, but everybody is aware of how daunting it can be to ask for help. And I think almost every organization that I've dealt with, Refuge Center included, we're going to make it as simple as possible. So I would just encourage people to call. And then the other thing, we do have a speakers bureau tab on our website, and there's some specific things that you can have someone come and talk to the leadership group at your church, or even talk with the young people in your group. There's some specific topics that we talk about, but I know a number of times just with the churches in the area, somebody's called and said, hey, can you guys just have somebody come out and talk to parents? And we're very happy to do that. Maybe it's part of Sunday school, maybe it's a special night, maybe it's, I think recently I went to one of the local schools and kind of spoke on the same subject as Hannah, talking about screen time and how that's working these days. So feel free to give us a call for sure.
Thank you so much, Rob. Yes, absolutely. Did anyone else have a question? Great. Well, thank you for joining us today, everyone. And again, I'll follow up. Hopefully everybody has my email on here, but I'll follow up with our church partnership info, as well as the recording of this time. And we do plan to do one more before the end of the year as well. So appreciate what each of you do. Obviously, working with children and youth is such a calling, and it's a talent and a gifting, and we are just thankful to walk alongside you guys. So reach out anytime, and y'all have a great rest of the day. And thank you, team. You did a great job. Thanks for that info. Bye. I think it went well.
You too. Oops.